The Screaming Mummy. In 1861, archaeologists discovered a collection of royal mummies hidden in a secret cache near Deir el-Bahari. Among them was a body that would disturb researchers for over a century. The mummy, known as Unknown Man E, was different from the others. When the wrappings were removed, his face was frozen in what appeared to be an eternal scream. His mouth was wide open. His features were twisted in apparent agony. The expression was so severe that those who first saw it described feeling deeply unsettled. For decades, his identity remained a mystery. Modern forensic analysis eventually pointed to a likely answer. He was Prince Pentuer, son of Pharaoh Ramesses III. In 1155 BC, a conspiracy formed within the royal harem. The goal was to assassinate the pharaoh and place Pentuer on the throne. The plot was discovered. The conspirators were arrested. Pentuer was found guilty of treason against his own father. The sentence was death, but the method revealed the true horror. Evidence suggests he was either strangled or forced to hang himself. Strangulation was slow. The rope or hands around his neck cut off air gradually. He would have gasped and choked. His face contorted as oxygen left his brain. The muscles in his jaw and neck locked in that final struggle. But physical death was only the beginning of his punishment. His body was treated in a way designed to condemn his soul. Ancient Egyptians believed proper mummification was essential for the afterlife. Pentuer received none of it. His internal organs were left inside his body to rot. He was wrapped in a goat skin, an animal considered ritually impure. This was spiritual execution. Without proper preparation, his soul could not enter the afterlife. He was condemned to eternal suffering, trapped between worlds. When archaeologists unwrapped him 3,000 years later, that scream was still there, preserved perfectly. The expression of a man who died slowly, knowing his punishment extended beyond death into eternity. The king's brutal end. Pharaoh Seqen-Enre-Tao II ruled southern Egypt during one of the most dangerous periods in its history. Around 1558 BC, the Hyksos people controlled the northern territories. They were foreign invaders armed with superior weapons and chariots. Seqen-Enre led his forces north in an attempt to liberate Egyptian land. He never returned alive. His mummy was discovered centuries later, and it told a disturbing story. Modern forensic examination revealed the position of his arms. They were locked in an unusual placement, consistent with his hands having been bound behind his back during death. This meant he was captured on the battlefield. For a pharaoh, considered a living god by his people, this was the ultimate humiliation. He was taken alive by his enemies. What happened next was not a quick military ending. Analysis of his skull shows at least 5 separate injuries. Each came from a different weapon. The first blow came from a bronze axe. It struck his forehead above the right eye, fracturing the bone and collapsing part of his face inward. A second strike came from behind his left ear. The weapon drove deep into the skull. Another wound shows a dagger thrust directly into his right cheek. The blade penetrated through to the bone. Each injury was delivered with force. The attackers were not aiming for a swift kill. They were destroying him. His face was systematically shattered. One strike landed near his nose, splitting the bone structure. Another fractured his jaw. The pattern suggests multiple men taking turns. He remained conscious through several of the blows. Blood loss and shock would have made him weak, but the brain can stay aware even as the skull breaks apart around it. Death came slowly through accumulated trauma. When Egyptian forces recovered his body, they brought him back for burial. The embalmers did their best to prepare him, but the damage was too severe to hide. His mummy still shows the complete destruction of his face, preserved as evidence of what happens when a god-king falls into enemy hands. Poisoned by lotion. Hatshepsut ruled Egypt for 22 years as one of its most powerful female pharaohs. She commissioned grand temples, expanded trade routes, and maintained peace throughout the kingdom. She died on January 16, 1458 BC. For thousands of years, the cause of her death remained unknown. Modern science eventually revealed she had been slowly poisoning herself. Her mummy shows evidence of a chronic skin condition, likely eczema or severe psoriasis. The constant itching and inflammation would have been unbearable. Red, cracked skin covering her arms and body. In her later years, she also developed bone cancer. The pain was relentless. As pharaoh, she had access to the finest physicians in Egypt. They prepared special treatments to ease her suffering. One such remedy was kept in a small sealed flask. The container bore her royal cartouche, identifying it as belonging to her personally. In 2007, researchers discovered this flask and analyzed its contents. Chemical testing revealed the lotion contained benzoparine, a highly carcinogenic substance. This compound causes cellular damage. It corrupts DNA. It triggers uncontrolled cell growth. Hatshepsut applied this lotion regularly to her damaged skin. Every application sent the poison deeper into her body. The substance absorbed through the broken, irritated patches where her skin condition was worst. Day after day, month after month, year after year. She rubbed it into her arms, her chest, anywhere the itching tormented her. The The relief was temporary. The damage was permanent and accumulating. The cancer that killed her may have been caused or severely worsened by her own medicine. Her cells mutated slowly. Tumors formed in her bones. The pain she tried to escape only intensified. Her physicians believed they were healing her. They were actually destroying her from within, drop by drop. She died seeking comfort. The most elite medical care in the ancient world failed her completely. Trusted treatments became instruments of slow death. The lotion meant to soothe. Instead, delivered poison directly into her bloodstream through thousands of applications. She never knew what was killing her. Robber's public impalement. Amun Penufer worked as a stonemason during the reign of Ramesses IX, around 1111 BC. His job gave him access to the Valley of the Kings, where pharaohs were buried with vast treasures. He saw the gold, he knew the layouts. He decided to steal from the dead. The papyrus Amherst records his full confession. He robbed multiple royal tombs over several months. He broke through sealed doorways and descended into burial chambers. He stripped gold from mummy wrappings. He tore apart the preserved bodies of kings to reach valuable amulets placed between the linen layers. In ancient Egypt, this was not simply theft. It was the destruction of the afterlife itself. The worst crime imaginable. Authorities eventually caught him. During interrogation, he received bastinado, repeated strikes to the soles of his feet, until he confessed to everything. The details were written down, the locations, the methods, the items stolen. The sentence was announced. He would be game overed by public impalement. The method was designed for maximum suffering. A sharpened wooden stake, approximately 8 feet tall. Guards forced him onto it. The stake entered through his rectum and was carefully angled to avoid immediately piercing vital organs. The goal was not quick death. It was prolonged agony as warning to others. He was then hoisted upright in a public square. Gravity did the rest. His own body weight slowly forced the stake deeper inside. It traveled upward through his torso, tearing through tissue and muscle. The pressure on his internal organs made breathing nearly impossible. Each attempt to inhale pushed him down further onto the stake. The pain was unrelenting. Crowds gathered to watch. Hours passed. The sun beat down. Dehydration combined with internal bleeding. His organs were gradually punctured one by one as the stake advanced. Consciousness remained for most of it. His body went into shock, but shock does not always mean unconsciousness. It took approximately 2 days for him to die. His body was left displayed on the stake afterward as a warning to anyone else who considered robbing the sacred dead. Pharaoh's fatal crash. Tutankhamun became pharaoh as a child and died around 1324 BC at approximately 19 years old. For thousands of years, the cause of his death remained one of Egypt's greatest mysteries. Modern forensic analysis of his mummy eventually revealed the truth. He died slowly from injuries sustained in a violent accident. Evidence suggests Tutankhamun was an active charioteer. Egyptian chariots were light, fast, and unstable. They were built for speed in warfare and hunting, not safety. Drivers stood exposed on a small platform pulled by 2 horses across rough desert terrain. There were no restraints, no protection. At full speed, any loss of control meant disaster. Examination of his mummy shows severe trauma. His left leg suffered a compound fracture. The bone snapped and broke through the skin. Multiple ribs on his left side were also shattered. The pattern of injuries indicates a violent side impact. He was likely thrown from the chariot or crushed against it as it overturned. The crash happened in an instant. Bones splintered, flesh tore open. He collapsed in the sand with his leg twisted at an unnatural angle, but the impact did not kill him. The compound fracture created an open wound. Bone protruded through skin. In ancient Egypt, there were no antibiotics. Physicians had no way to prevent infection once bacteria entered the bloodstream. Within days, the wound began to fester. The tissue around the break turned dark. Pus formed. The smell of decay came from living flesh. Gangrene spread through his leg. The infection moved into his blood. Fever consumed him. He became delirious. Palace physicians could only watch as the rot advanced. His organs began failing one by one as sepsis took hold. What started as a broken leg became a death sentence. He died in his bed, likely 2 to 3 weeks after the crash. Blood poisoning from an infected fracture. The boy king who survived the initial violence of the accident succumbed slowly to the invisible destruction happening inside his body. Drowning in gold. Ptolemy XIII was approximately 14 years old when he became co-ruler of Egypt with his older sister Cleopatra. Their relationship quickly deteriorated into civil war. By 47 BC, Julius Caesar had arrived in Egypt and sided with Cleopatra. Ptolemy's forces were crushed at the Battle of the Nile. The young king had no choice but to flee. He ran wearing full royal regalia. A heavy golden breastplate covered his chest. Decorative archive armor pieces adorned his arms and shoulders. A ceremonial sword hung at his side. Gold medallions and insignia marked his divine status as pharaoh. The armor was meant to display power and authority. It weighed approximately 30 to 40 pounds of solid gold and bronze. It made him instantly recognizable as royalty. It also made him incredibly heavy. Ptolemy reached a boat on the Nile with his remaining soldiers and courtiers. The vessel was overloaded. People crowded onto the deck, desperate to escape Caesar's advancing army. The Nile's current was strong. The boat listed from uneven weight distribution. Someone shifted, the balance broke. The boat capsized suddenly. Bodies plunged into the water. Ptolemy went under immediately. The gold armor pulled him straight down. He struggled to stay at the surface. His arms thrashed. He tried to remove the breastplate, but panic made his fingers clumsy. The straps would not come loose. The weight was relentless. Every movement exhausted him. The armor dragged him deeper. His lungs burned. Water filled his mouth when he tried to breathe. The surface grew farther away. Sunlight faded above him. His legs kicked frantically, but the gold kept pulling, 30 pounds of metal sinking like an anchor. He could not fight it. His strength gave out. Water rushed into his lungs. The burning became unbearable, then stopped. His body sank to the river bottom, still encased in golden armor. Caesar's forces recovered it later. They identified him immediately by the royal insignia he wore. The symbols of his power had become the instrument of his death. Retribution's thigh wound. Cambyses II was a Persian king who conquered Egypt in 525 BC. He ruled as a tyrant and showed open contempt for Egyptian religion. The Egyptians considered their gods sacred and living. Cambyses saw them as superstition. His disrespect would eventually cost him his life in the most eerie way imaginable. The Apis bull was the most sacred animal in all of Egypt. It was believed to be the living incarnation of the god Ptah. Only one Apis bull existed at any time, selected by specific markings and worshipped throughout its life. According to the historian Herodotus, Cambyses mocked this belief. He drew his dagger and deliberately stabbed the sacred bull in its thigh. The animal bled from the wound. Egyptian priests watched in horror. They warned him that divine retribution would follow. The bull died days later from the injury. Cambyses laughed at their predictions. 3 years passed. In 522 BC, Cambyses was in Syria leading a military campaign. He prepared to mount his horse for battle. He carried the same dagger at his side, secured in its scabbard. As he swung his leg over the horse, the scabbard broke or fell loose. The exposed blade stabbed directly into his own thigh. The same weapon. The exact same location where he had wounded the sacred bull. At first, the injury seemed minor, a puncture wound. He dismissed it and continued the campaign. Within days, the wound began to change. The flesh around it turned dark. Infection set in rapidly. The tissue started to rot. Black gangrene spread outward from the puncture. The smell of decaying flesh came from his living leg. Physicians tried to stop it, but the putrefaction advanced. Fever consumed him. The leg swelled and blackened further. He became delirious, likely realizing the coincidence. Same weapon, same location. 3 years after stabbing the god, the infection spread into his bloodstream. Sepsis shut down his organs one by one. Cambyses died in agony from the festering wound, killed by the same thigh injury he had inflicted on the sacred bull. Mass retainer sacrifice. King Den ruled Egypt during the First Dynasty, around 2970 BC. He was buried at Abydos in a tomb befitting his status as pharaoh, but he was not laid to rest alone. Ancient Egyptian belief held that a king remained a king in the afterlife. He required his full court to serve him beyond death. Servants, craftsmen, guards, and concubines were all needed. They had to die with him. Archaeological excavation of his tomb complex revealed the scale of what happened. Surrounding the king's burial chamber were 230 subsidiary graves. All were sealed at the same time. Analysis confirmed every body dated to the same period. This was not gradual burial over years. It was a single mass event. 230 people were game overed on the same day to accompany their king into eternity. The victims included men, women, and individuals of varying ages. They were not volunteers. This was compulsory sacrifice dictated by religious law. When the pharaoh died, his retainers had no choice. Some evidence suggests poison was administered collectively to make the process manageable. Others may have been game overed systematically, one by one. Archaeological findings indicate varied methods were used. Some individuals may have been drugged first to prevent resistance or escape attempts. Others showed signs in their skeletal remains suggesting they were buried alive in sealed chambers. The scene must have been absolute terror. 230 people knowing they were condemned to die simply because their king had died. Children were among them. Royal guards ensured no one fled. The inevitability was suffocating. Some likely screamed. Others accepted it in drug silence. But all of them died within hours of each other. Each body was placed in a small chamber surrounding the king's tomb, cramped spaces barely large enough to contain them. They were positioned to serve eternally. Some skeletons showed evidence of struggle. hands clawing at stone. Others appeared peaceful, likely sedated before death. 230 individual lives ended in a single day, all to ensure one man had servants in the afterlife. The practice was eventually abandoned as too costly and brutal.